First contact's contempt. Emperor Krestal's crystalline fingers drummed against the arm of his command throne as he watched the primitive human vessel approach his flagship. The massive viewing wall of the bridge displayed every imperfection in the Earthship's hull, every inefficient curve of its design. His chief science advisor, Valinor, stood rigidly beside him, mandibles twitching with barely contained disdain. "Look at their propulsion system," Krestal sneered, his bioluminescent markings pulsing with derision. "Chemical rockets assisted by what they call ion drives. We abandoned such crude methods millennia ago." The bridge crew chittered in agreement, their own markings flashing in synchronized mockery. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy's eastern spiral for over 10,000 years, their crystalline technology far surpassing anything their newest neighbors could imagine. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and yet they had the audacity to request a diplomatic meeting with the Emperor himself. "Your Radiance," Valinor spoke, his voice resonating like wind through crystal caves. "Perhaps we should simply annex their territories now. Save ourselves the pretense of diplomacy." Krestal waved a dismissive hand. "Let them come. Their presumption amuses me. Besides, I wish to see these creatures up close before deciding their fate." The human vessel, designated as the UES Prometheus, docked with all the grace of a wounded graviton whale. Krestal watched through multiple feeds as their delegation made their way through the crystalline corridors of his flagship, their environmental suits clunking awkwardly against the smooth floors. Ambassador Sarah Chen led the human group, accompanied by Captain Marcus Rodriguez and Dr. Emily Wong, their chief scientist. Krestal studied them as they were escorted into his throne room, noting their soft, bilateral symmetry and their reliance on artificial protection from the ship's crystal resonance atmosphere. "Welcome to the heart of dawn," Krestal announced, his translator converting his crystalline tones into human speech. "I trust you find our accommodations adequate." Chen bowed slightly, her expression neutral despite the barely concealed wonder in her eyes. "Your Radiance, we are honored by your hospitality. The Dominion's achievements in crystal-based technology are legendary." "Yes," Krestal agreed, "though I imagine much of what you see here appears as magic to your kind." Before Chen could respond, proximity alarms shrieked through the chamber. Valinor rushed to a nearby console, his markings flashing urgent patterns. "Your Radiance. Quantum anomalies detected, massive distortions approaching through in space." The viewing wall erupted with impossible colors as reality itself seemed to tear open. Through the breach emerged ships unlike anything Krestal had ever seen, geometric nightmares that defied Euclidean physics. The unknown vessels immediately opened fire, their weapons bypassing the flagship's crystalline shields as if they didn't exist. "Impossible!" Valinor screamed as systems began failing throughout the ship. "They're using weapons that operate on principles we can't even detect." The flagship shuddered as more hits landed. Krestal watched in horror as his mighty vessel's crystal structure began to fracture. The human delegation, however, was already in motion. Rodriguez had his communicator out, barking orders to the Prometheus. "Your Radiance," Chen called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Our sensors detected similar anomalies in the Carina sector last month. We developed countermeasures. Let us help." Krestal's pride warred with his survival instinct as another blast rocked the ship. His entire bridge crew looked to him, awaiting his decision. Finally, he inclined his head. "Proceed." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Prometheus, execute Protocol Omega. Transfer shield modifications to the Dominion flagship. Dr. Wong, show their engineers the frequency adjustments." What happened next would forever change Krestal's view of humanity. The Prometheus, that ugly, primitive vessel, moved to intercept the next attack. Its shields, modified with what the humans called quantum uncertainty field generators, absorbed the impossible weapons. Dr. Wong worked with Valinor, explaining principles that somehow merged crystal technology with human innovation in ways the Dominion had never considered. As the immediate crisis passed and the unknown ships retreated, Crestel found himself looking at his human guests with new eyes. Perhaps there was more to these beings than he had assumed, and perhaps it was time for the Dominion to learn some new tricks. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about humanity, technology, and his own people's place in the galaxy. Continued in Part 2. Learning Curve. Crestel had never felt so humbled in his 300 cycles of life. Standing on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, he watched human officers navigate through spaces that, by Dominion standards, should have been cluttered with crystalline control interfaces. Instead, they used a mixture of holographic displays, neural interfaces, and what they called haptic controls. "You see, your radiance," Dr. Wong explained, her hands dancing through a holographic engine diagram. "We couldn't match your crystal technology, so we had to think differently. Our quantum uncertainty drives work by exploiting the gaps between probable realities." The Emperor's markings pulsed with confusion. "But that's unsafe, unreliable. The very concept defies standard navigational principles." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "That's exactly why it works against those anomaly ships. They expect ordered, predictable responses. Our systems are intentionally unpredictable." The past week had been a crash course in human innovation. After the attack, the Dominion fleet had suffered severe damage to their crystal matrix networks. The Prometheus, along with 3 other human vessels, had arrived to assist with repairs and modifications. What Crestel initially viewed as charity now revealed itself as a masterclass in adaptive thinking. Valner, who had initially resisted working with the human engineers, now spent hours in deep discussion with Dr. Wong. They had discovered that human quantum uncertainty technology could be integrated with crystal resonance fields, creating hybrid systems more powerful than either approach alone. "Watch this," Lieutenant Sarah Martinez announced from her station. She activated the ship's new hybrid drive system. The Prometheus slipped between quantum states so smoothly that Crestel barely felt the transition. His own ship's crystal drives, while powerful, caused significant discomfort during reality shifts. "How do you compensate for the probability cascade?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing his former condescension. "We don't," Martins replied. "We ride it. Like surfing." "Surfing? It's an earth sport," Rodriguez explained. "You don't fight the wave. You work with it, become part of it. That's how we approach space too. Your crystal technology tries to impose order on chaos. We've learned to dance with the chaos instead." Before Crestel could respond, the ship's sensors detected another quantum anomaly. This time, they were ready. The hybrid shields hummed to life, combining crystal resonance with quantum uncertainty fields. Through the view screen, Crestel watched in amazement as 3 of the geometric nightmare ships emerged. "Combat stations," Rodriguez ordered calmly. "Your Radiance, would you like to see how we fight?" For the first time in his life, Crestel felt like a student rather than a master. "Please proceed, Captain." The battle that followed defied everything the Emperor knew about space combat. The Prometheus moved like no ship he'd ever seen, its hybrid drives allowing it to exist in multiple probable locations simultaneously. The enemy vessels, unable to lock onto any single reality state, fired uselessly into the quantum foam. "Now," Rodriguez commanded, "show them our new tricks." The Prometheus's weapons array, modified with crystalline focusing elements, fired beams that phased between states of matter. The enemy shields, designed to block either energy or physical attacks, couldn't adapt to weapons that were both and neither simultaneously. One of the nightmare ships exploded in a cascade of impossible geometries. The others retreated immediately, their Euclidean-defying forms folding in on themselves until they vanished. "Incredible," Valnor whispered, his scientific detachment cracking. "They combined our crystalline energy focusing with their quantum uncertainty principles. The weapon existed in a superposition of states until impact." Crestel's markings pulsed with excitement, despite his attempt to maintain imperial dignity. "How many other innovations have you developed?" Would you like a tour of our engine room? Dr. Wong offered. We've made some interesting modifications to the standard matter-antimatter containment fields using principles we learned from your crystal matrices. The Emperor found himself nodding eagerly, then caught himself. For purely diplomatic purposes, of course. The Dominion must understand its allies' capabilities. Rodriguez and Wong exchanged knowing looks. Of course, Your Radiance, the captain agreed. Purely diplomatic. As they headed toward engineering, Krestol realized that his galaxy had suddenly become much larger and much more interesting. These humans, with their chaotic methods and impossible solutions, were teaching him that there was more than one way to master the cosmos. Perhaps it was time for the Dominion to evolve. Continued in Part 3. Crisis Point. The quantum anomaly detection grid lit up like a supernova. Hundreds of signals appeared simultaneously across 3 sectors, their impossible geometries tearing holes in the fabric of space-time. Ambassador Chen's face went pale as she studied the tactical display aboard the Heart of Dawn. They're not just attacking anymore, she announced to the gathered human and Dominion leaders. This is an invasion. Krestol's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly as he processed the information. The nightmare ships had spent weeks probing their defenses, testing the new hybrid technologies. Now they had returned in force. The Carina sector has gone dark. Valnor reported, his markings pulsing urgent patterns. We've lost contact with 3 colony worlds and 6 deep space outposts. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, his holographic display showing movement patterns. They're not using standard invasion tactics. Look at these formation shifts. They're creating some kind of geometric pattern across space itself. Dr. Wong's eyes widened as she overlaid quantum field readings. It's not just an invasion fleet. They're building something. Each incursion point is like a node in a vast lattice. They're trying to restructure our region of space to match their own physics. If they succeed, Valnor added, both our species will find our technology useless. Our very atoms might cease to function properly. The gathered leaders fell silent, the weight of extinction hanging heavy in the crystalline chamber. Humanity's quantum uncertainty drives and the Dominion's crystal matrices alike would fail in a universe operating on fundamentally different mathematical principles. We need to hit them at their point of origin, Rodriguez said finally. These incursions are all controlled from somewhere, if we can find their home dimension. Impossible, Valnor interrupted. The energy requirements to cross dimensional boundaries would be. Actually, Dr. Wong interjected, bringing up a new series of calculations. What if we combined approaches? Your crystal matrices can channel virtually unlimited energy. Our quantum uncertainty drives can find gaps between realities. Together, Krestol's markings pulsed with sudden understanding. We could create a bridge between dimensions, using crystal resonance to stabilize the quantum foam, and then destabilize their entire network, Chen finished. But we'd need perfect coordination between our fleets. One mistake, and we could tear apart both universes. The Emperor rose from his crystalline throne, his form glowing with determination. Then we must not make mistakes. Captain Rodriguez, how quickly can we modify the entire Dominion fleet with hybrid systems? With both our engineering teams working around the clock. Maybe 72 hours. You have 48, Krestol declared. Valnor, summon every crystal right in the Empire. Dr. Wong, we'll need your quantum physicists to train them. Ambassador Chen, coordinate with Earth Command. We need every ship, every resource, every mind focused on this. As the chamber erupted into activity, Rodriguez approached the Emperor. Your Radiance, even if we succeed, will be attempting something never done before. The power requirements alone will drain every crystal matrix in the fleet, Krestol finished. Yes, and your ship's uncertainty drives will be pushed far beyond safe limits. We may not survive the attempt. But if we don't try, we definitely won't survive what's coming. The Emperor's markings pulsed with what might have been amusement. You know, Captain, a month ago, I would have considered it beneath my dignity to die alongside humans. Now, I can think of no more honorable end. For 48 hours, the Heart of Dawn became the center of the most ambitious engineering project in known history. Human quantum physicists worked alongside crystal rights, merging technologies that shouldn't have been compatible. Every ship in both fleets was modified, their systems linked in ways that defied conventional physics. Dr. Wong and Valinor hardly slept, their shared obsession driving them to perfect the dimensional bridge calculations. They found that human intuition combined with Dominion precision created solutions neither species would have discovered alone. As the deadline approached, Krestal stood on his bridge, watching the combined fleet take formation. Human ships, ugly and asymmetrical by Dominion standards, moved in perfect harmony with crystalline vessels that shimmered like stars. "Your Radiance," Rodriguez called from his temporary station. "The Nightmare Fleet is accelerating their lattice construction. We're detecting critical stress points in local spacetime." "Then we go now," Krestal declared, his voice resonating through both human and Dominion communications channels. "All ships, prepare for dimensional shift. May both our gods forgive us for what we're about to attempt." The combined fleet aligned, crystal matrices humming in harmony with quantum uncertainty drives. In the space between them, reality itself began to bend. Continued in Part 4. Breach. Reality screamed. There was no other way to describe the sound that rippled through every ship as the combined fleet activated their hybrid drives. Space itself seemed to fold, crystal matrices channeling impossible amounts of energy, while quantum uncertainty drives punched holes through dimensional walls. "Bridge integrity at 30%. Valinor shouted over the sound of crystalline structures groaning throughout the Heart of Dawn. "The fleet's quantum field harmonics are destabilizing." Dr. Wong's fingers flew across her console, adjusting calculations in real time. "Compensating. Captain Rodriguez, we need the human ships to modulate their uncertainty fields. Match the crystal resonance frequency. All ships, pattern Epsilon," Rodriguez commanded. The human vessels shifted formation, their drives pulsing in sync with the Dominion fleet's crystal matrices. The screaming subsided slightly. Through the viewing wall, Krestal watched reality tear open. The breach was nothing like the nightmare ship's portals. Instead of geometric horror, this was pure mathematics made manifest. Crystal energy and quantum probability merged to create something entirely new. "Dimensional breach stabilizing," Valinor reported, his markings pulsing with cautious hope. "We're getting readings from the other side." The sensors revealed a space that didn't follow normal physical laws. Structures that couldn't exist in Euclidean space stretched in all directions, their geometries hurting the mind. And among them, vast shipyards producing the nightmare vessels that had been invading normal space. "By the Crystal Throne," Krestal whispered, "their entire civilization exists in violation of our universe's laws. Which means they're just as vulnerable to our physics as we are to theirs," Dr. Wong realized. "Your Radiance, if we can force normal spacetime into their dimension, their entire realm would collapse," Valinor finished. "But the energy required would drain every crystal matrix and uncertainty drive in the fleet," Rodriguez confirmed. "A one-way trip." Krestal's markings pulsed with grim determination. "Better to die bringing the fight to them than wait for our universe to be reformed in their image. All ships, prepare for dimensional transit." The combined fleet moved through the breach, crystal ships and human vessels in perfect formation. As they entered the nightmare dimension, systems began failing immediately. Hull metal started flowing like liquid, crystal matrices cracked under impossible stresses, and uncertainty drives struggled to maintain basic physical constants. The enemy responded immediately. Nightmare ships rose from their impossible shipyards, weapons charging. But they had never faced an attack in their own dimension, never imagined their victims could reach them here. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega," Rodriguez commanded. The human fleet broke formation, their failing uncertainty drives actually working better in this chaotic realm. They engaged the nightmare ships while the Dominion vessels moved into position. Crystal matrices at critical levels, Valnor warned. We cannot maintain dimensional stability much longer. We don't need to, Dr. Wong said. Your radiance, if we overload every crystal matrix simultaneously while the human ships push their uncertainty drives to maximum, the resulting cascade would force our physics into their dimension. Crestel finished. A universe-wide crystal resonance wave, combined with quantum probability collapse. He opened a channel to all ships. This is the Emperor. All Dominion vessels, prepare for simultaneous crystal matrix overload. Human ships, stand ready to amplify the wave with your uncertainty fields. Time it perfectly, Dr. Wong warned. We'll only get one chance. The nightmare ships pressed their attack, reality warping weapons tearing apart ships on both sides. The combined fleet took devastating losses, but held formation. Warning klaxons blared throughout every vessel as systems redlined. Now, Crestal commanded. Every crystal matrix in the Dominion fleet detonated simultaneously. The release of energy was beyond measurement, a wave of pure crystalline resonance that spread at faster than light speeds. The human ship's uncertainty drives pushed to self-destruction, turning that wave into a cascade of quantum probability collapse. Normal spacetime crashed into the nightmare dimension like a tsunami. The impossible geometries of the enemy realm began to shatter, their physics unable to withstand the intrusion of ordinary reality. Enemy ships twisted and collapsed as their own dimension betrayed them. All surviving ships, retreat through the breach. Rodriguez ordered. The fleet turned as one, racing for the portal as the nightmare dimension collapsed behind them. Ships limped through, crystal matrices dark and uncertainty drives burned out. The Heart of Dawn was the last to return, its once pristine crystalline form now cracked and dulled. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the dimensional breach collapsed, taking the nightmare realm with it. On the bridge, emergency lighting cast everything in a dim glow. Crestal looked around at his damaged flagship, at the human officers who had helped save both their civilizations, and felt his markings pulse with something new. Respect. Damage report, he requested quietly. Total crystal matrix failure across all Dominion ships, Valnor reported. Uncertainty drives burned out in the human fleet. We barely have enough power for life support. But we're alive, Rodriguez added. And they're gone. Dr. Wong was already working at her terminal, running calculations. The dimensional collapse was complete. They won't be coming back. Then we have work to do, Crestal declared. Our ships need rebuilding. But this time, he turned to face the humans, his markings pulsing with determination. We build them together. Continued in Part 5. Evolution. 6 months after the dimensional battle, the shipyards above Earth hummed with activity. Crystal Rights worked alongside human engineers, their combined expertise giving birth to vessels unlike anything either civilization had seen before. Crestal stood in the observation deck of the new Joint Species Space Station, Unity Point, watching the construction. Beside him, Ambassador Chen smiled as a prototype vessel emerged from the shipyard's crystalline docks. The Harmony class, she explained, first of the new hybrid ships, crystal matrix core with quantum uncertainty shielding. The best of both our technologies. The ship was beautiful in a way that defied traditional aesthetics. Its crystalline hull flowed with organic curves more typical of human designs, while maintaining the geometric precision the Dominion favored. As it powered up its engines, the space around it seemed to shimmer with possibilities. To think, Crestal mused, his markings pulsing with gentle amusement. 6 months ago, I considered human ships ugly and primitive. Now I find myself appreciating their artistic irregularities. And I've developed quite a fondness for crystalline architecture, Chen replied. Though I still think your throne room could use some comfortable chairs. Their friendly banter was interrupted by Dr. Wong and Valiner, who burst onto the observation deck with characteristic enthusiasm. The human scientist and Dominion researcher had become inseparable, their collaborative papers revolutionizing both species' understanding of physics. Your Radiance, Ambassador. Valner's markings pulsed with excitement. We've made a breakthrough in quantum crystal computation. The hybrid matrices don't just channel energy better than pure crystal or quantum systems, Dr. Wang explained, pulling up a holographic display. They're developing emerging properties we never predicted. The crystal structures are learning to navigate quantum states on their own. Are you saying the ships are becoming intelligent? Chen asked. Not exactly, Valnor clarified. More like intuitive. The crystal matrices are forming quantum neural networks, adapting to space-time fluctuations faster than any programmed system could. Crestel watched as the prototype ship executed a series of maneuvers that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Like the ship is learning to surf reality itself, he said, using the human metaphor that had so confused him before. Exactly, Dr. Wang beamed. And that's just the beginning. We're seeing similar developments in medicine, communication, even agriculture. The combination of crystal resonance and quantum uncertainty principles is opening doors we never knew existed. A flash of light drew their attention back to the viewport. Captain Rodriguez's new vessel, the Phoenix Dawn, was arriving from its maiden voyage to the former conflict zone. The ship was a perfect fusion of human and Dominion design philosophy, its crystalline form flowing like liquid metal as its quantum fields bent light around the hull. Report from the border sectors, Chen read from her datapad. No signs of dimensional instability. Whatever remains of the nightmare realm, it's no longer a threat to our universe. Sometimes I wonder, Crestel said softly, if they truly understood what they were trying to do. Did they realize they were attempting to impose their version of order on our chaos? Or were they simply incapable of comprehending a universe different from their own? Perhaps that was their limitation, Wang suggested. They could only think in terms of conquest and conversion. They never considered adaptation and cooperation. Their loss. Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system as the Phoenix Dawn docked. They could have learned so much from both our peoples. Crestel felt his markings pulse with pride, not the old pride of superiority, but something new. Pride in what they had accomplished together, in how both civilizations had grown. The Dominion spent 10,000 years believing we had reached the pinnacle of development, he admitted. We thought we could progress no further, learn no more. We were wrong. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to us. The reminder that there is always more to discover, always new ways to adapt and grow. And you've taught us the value of precision, of building on established foundations, Chen replied. Together, we're stronger than either of us could have been alone. Through the viewport, more ships were taking shape in the yards. Each one represented countless hours of collaboration, of humans and Dominion citizens learning to work together, to see the universe through each other's eyes. They were no longer simply combining technologies. They were creating something entirely new. To the future, Crestel declared, his markings glowing bright enough to illuminate the observation deck. May we never stop learning from each other. As if in response, the prototype Harmony-class ship activated its hybrid drive. Space itself seemed to sing as crystal resonance, and quantum uncertainty merged in perfect balance, lighting up the stars with possibilities that neither humanity nor the Dominion had dreamed of before they learned to work together. The end.